Hello, everyone. Uh, I had an idea for a sort of new system, I guess you could say, for wording the cards in Demon Bluff. Uh, I wanted to make it a video instead of like a giant Discord post or something. And I figured, well, I'm already making a video about it, so I might as well include some other ideas I had as well. So yeah, that's what this is about. The new wording of the cards starts with breaking up the term ability into multiple different categories. Info, and this is the tooltip, information provided as a statement. When lying, it is incorrect. So, of course, this is stuff like Enlightened ability or Architect. Technically, something like Fortune Teller falls into this category, but I'll explain how that's distinct in a bit. Skill, an ability besides information. When lying, it doesn't work. So, these are things like the Knight's invincibility, the Alchemist curing, the Slayer slaying. Having this distinction, I think, helps people understand what it means for an ability to not work, because for info, it means that their information is incorrect. For a skill, it means it just doesn't happen. It's a distinction that I think would help people understand that, like, ability doesn't work means something specific. Curse, evil ability that affects other characters. So I have this different categorization for abilities that evil characters have because most evil characters are lying. They shouldn't have skills because if they had a skill, then that skill would stop working when they're lying. So they have curses instead. Not all evil abilities are curses because currently I'm categorizing it as basically, does the witness detect it? If the witness detects an ability, then I'm calling it a curse. If not, then it's going into this last category, innate. Character features that function regardless of lying. So this would be things like, all evil characters lying. Well, not all evil characters, but most evil characters lying and disguising. The knight's extra 4 damage when you do manage to kill them. The drunk's corruption, because obviously that can't be a skill, because then he would lose it because he corrupts himself, and he'd get going into like an infinite cycle of like having and not having a skill, and that would be stupid. More keywords. These are some new keywords that I am introducing just to have terms for specific concepts. These aren't all of the keywords that I am adding, but these are, I think, the ones that need to be explained first before we go in. So questioning X, select me, then choose X characters to be my questioned. Abilities involving questions don't activate until they're chosen. So, for example, Fortune Teller has questioning 2. Um, and she has an info ability, but it involves questioned. So she won't give her info until you choose her question. And this tooltip would be dynamic. It would, or at least I figure, like that's how I would do it. But I don't know if that's, like, it's probably not that difficult to program, right? I mean, if it is, then uh, just questioning X is fine. Um, but you would hover over questioning 2, and it would say 2 characters. It would say questioning 2 characters. If you hover over questioning 1, it would say questioning 1 character, etc. Questioned, yeah, that's just characters chosen for a character's questioning. Obviously, this needs a tooltip because it's going to show up in abilities like fortune tellers and jesters. Deceit. Specific rules followed when lying. So I want to move things like the Empress's, when the Empress lies, she always points to 3 good characters. I want to move that out of the hint section and into her ability text. My thinking is that deceits should probably not show up when you hover over a character and read their tooltip that tells you their ability. But if you right click on the character, it should show you the deceit, but it should fall under the ability section rather than the hints section. Because right now it's in its own little section, and I don't think it should be. Nightfall. The night cycle activates. Night falls after every 4 characters revealed. Technically, I don't know that for every character, night falls at the same time. Like, maybe Lilis only would be 4, and maybe another character would have it be 3, and another character would have it be 5. So if that was the case, then this should be Nightfall X, and this should be X here. But for now, I'm assuming that it's always every 4 characters revealed, and this would be the tooltip. Obviously, only Lilis has this, but I just figured other characters will probably have it in the future, so it would be nice to have that description, just a word for it that you can just plop onto any character that activates the night cycle. So you don't need to go through their whole text to see oh yes, this character does something in the night, so they activate night. Daily can choose new question after each night. From what I've heard, and maybe this isn't correct, but the fact that certain characters get their abilities back after night was a bug, but then the dev decided that they liked it, so they kept it in. And I think it's fine. Kind of helps with the lack with the way that Lilis kind of hides information from you by killing characters off. But I think it should be stated in game that it happens, and the easiest way to do that, I think, is just to have a keyword that you can slap on, after questioning, questioning 2 daily, and then something so that way people don't think all abilities do that. It's just certain abilities do refresh at night. Foundation, the start of the game before any characters are revealed. There are a lot of characters that with a game start ability, but just the way that I've been formatting the text, it helps to have a keyword for that rather than have game start. And because otherwise the way I'm phrasing it, I would just keep saying at the start of the game, and that's I don't know, just thought a keyword for it would be nice. And then one other thing that I want to call attention to, lying is a state, not an action. This is, I figure already how the game works, and I'm sure the devs, of course, know that, having programmed it, but I wanted to make that as clear as I could in these reworded character abilities. So lying has the tooltip, gives incorrect info and can't use skills, obeys role-specific deceits. And some words that are keywords, I'm okay with uh conjugating, like corrupted. The game pretty consistently uses corrupted instead of like corruption or corrupt. I think there's like a couple instances of of the word corruption, but they're mostly pretty consistently just corrupted. I found it useful to conjugate that, but I think people can pick up on what that means. Lying, I want to be super explicitly clear that it's a state, that it's not an action. I don't want people to think like it's about whether or not the character lies. It's whether or not they are in the state called lying. And maybe that won't come through necessarily. People could still have this misconception, but I think it's easier to pick up on this idea if every instance of the word, every instance of lying is the word lying. It's not like lies or lie. So I made sure to only use the word lying and no other conjugation of that. Okay, and so with all that preamble, now we're getting to the actual character abilities. Starting with Alchemist. Skill. At Foundation, I attempt to cure all villagers within range 2 of me. Info. Learn how many villagers I cured. So as I mentioned, there are other keywords that I added besides the ones that I mentioned up there. I will go over the added keywords that I didn't mention before after going through all the characters. But like cure, you know what that is. I have a tooltip for it later for completeness, but you understand that. Range 2, I figured made more sense as a keyword than as a hint. So that, like you can just hover over it to get that tooltip instead of having to look at the hint. Because like the hint is kind of a weird place for the definition of that, in my opinion. But that's okay. And yes, we can see here just dividing it up like this makes it clear that, like for example, a puppet that wouldn't have skills but does have info, but isn't lying, they'll give correct info, but their skill won't work. So it's clearer what it means for abilities to not work here, because I'm not using the term abilities, I'm using the term skill. And abilities refers to like all this total. Hints, if I am corrupted, I can't cure myself. I don't think this is a common misconception, but I think like if you're first starting the game, this might be nice to know, because I think some people could think that. I think I've seen some people confused about that. Villagers cured by someone else aren't counted in my info. Just to make clear that they aren't all curing simultaneously and then taking shared credit for anyone in their overlapping range. During Foundation, corrupting effects happen before curing effects. That's, I think most people would figure that, because what would be the point of the Alchemist if a corruption happened later? But I don't know, maybe some new player thinks that the effects could happen in like a random order, and then, or like maybe that they go in seat order, and then, oh, what if this person corrupted after the Alchemist cured? But no, just this makes it super clear that curing effects happen later. Architect. Info, learn whether the left or right half of the circle is more evil or that both sides are equally evil. Yeah, so I wanted to specify that it's left or right half because that's like, if the first time you see it, if the first time you see Architect, he says both sides are equally evil, then it's good to know what two sides he's talking about. In fact, I actually saw, like, just before starting to record this in the Discord, someone put out false bug report. They thought they were giving a real bug, but it was just a misunderstanding of the ability. The first time they saw Alchemist, he said both sides are equally evil, and they assumed that meant, looking ahead to this hint here, they assumed that it was from the Architect's perspective, the left and right halves. And they thought, oh, well, clearly one half from the Architect's perspective is more evil than the other, so why is he saying that? But no, like this combined with this would clear that up. This hint, the left and right halves are from your perspective, not mine. And this isn't the only person I've seen have that confusion, so I think this would be helpful. Characters in the middle aren't counted toward the left or right half. This might sound like it's different from, like, mechanically from how it works in the game, but it's logically equivalent to counting the left and right or counting the middle as both, because if you think about, like, the left half plus the middle versus the right half plus the middle, then if you take away the middle from both sides of that, possibly an inequality, possibly it's an equality, you are just left with, like, whichever side, but you're taking away the same thing from both sides. So of course, whatever was bigger before will stay bigger. There's no reason you can't just phrase it this way. This way is a lot easier to think about, I find. So I think it's better to phrase it this way. Baker. Skill. When I am revealed, one random unrevealed good villager becomes a baker if possible. Info. Learn what role I was before I was transformed, or that I am the original. Deceit. I won't claim to be the original. So again, I wanted to specify that she can say, I am the original, because if your first ever baker says, I was a baker, it's confusing what that means. So I wanted to say in the info that, I was a baker means I'm a baker turned baker. Which, if it's the first card you turned up, that's either a lie or it's the puppet. hints, bakers I create have all of my abilities. A lot of people don't get the fact that the baker, like, chains continuously until there's no more characters left to convert. So I wanted to just, I guess this doesn't technically say that explicitly, but I put 4 hints in here. I can't I can't reasonably make all of these like so explicitly clear, because that would just be like a huge hint box. Like, that's way too big. There's no reason for that. Well, I mean, I guess, if anyone's gonna have that, baker makes sense to have that, but I don't want to make it too bad. Like, I don't want to make the hitbox too big. Like, this is already pushing it. Corrupted characters become corrupted bakers, basically to clarify that she can target a corrupted character. Corrupted only means that their own ability doesn't work, not that they can't be targeted by the baker, but it also won't cure corruption, which I have seen as a misconception with the baker from players that are just starting. I can be targeted by another baker, in which case I will say I was a baker unless I am lying. This is just to clarify, like, yeah, bakers are not skipped over when a baker chooses who they're going to target with their ability, with their skill, rather. And basically, to clarify, I was a baker is a legitimate thing for a baker to say, because a lot of people think that this has to be a lie. Like, a lot of people get confused with baker, thinking that, like, well, how can you say that? Because you wouldn't have been turned into a baker if you were a baker. But no, bakers can be targeted if there are multiple original bakers because of Shaman or Doppelganger. Original means that I am starting a baker chain. I couldn't find a better way to phrase that. I don't. I didn't quite like using this sort of like unmechanic, like this term isn't like, doesn't have any specific mechanical meaning, like baker chain. But there's not much I can do to communicate the idea without being like super overly verbose, because it doesn't necessarily mean that a character is untransformed, because a character that's because if a counselor turns like a hunter into a doppelganger and the doppelganger copies baker, then they still say I am the original baker. So yeah, original just means that they're starting. It doesn't mean that they're untransformed. It means that they're starting a baker chain. Bard info. Learn how far I am from the closest corrupted character. Not much has changed here. I do have a change that I would want to make to their statement, like the actual text that they say when they're revealed, but that's for later. I'm just going over ability text now. I'm sure that you could guess what that change is. Like, a lot of people want that change, or a lot of people like, a lot of people know what change that should be, because so many people get confused. But yeah, that comes later. Bishop info. Learn up to 3 characters and the character types among them. Learned characters are 1 villager, 1 outcast, and 1 evil, if possible. Deceit. All learned characters are villagers. So I think this is the first character with a deceit. So yeah, this is moved up into the abilities here so that it's not like in the hints. Because I feel like hints should be just for clarifying like consequences of the rules that might not be obvious that are particularly relevant for this character. Or just like clarifying like what the info here, for example, means when it says up to 3 characters. Because like this means a specific thing. It's just not defined in this text because that would be overly verbose. So I put it in hints. I exclude character types I can't find unless I'm lying. Yeah, so that's just to explicitly say if I don't mention an outcast, it means that I didn't find one, and if I'm lying, I might not. Uh, I might not exclude a character type I can't find. I might claim to see an outcast, even if I don't see one. Confessor. Info. I am evil. If I am evil or corrupted, learn I am dizzy. Otherwise, learn I am good. Innate. I cannot be lying. So this is our first instance of innate. Yeah, so because even when the Confessor is corrupted, they aren't classified in the game as lying. And, like, currently, the way the hint reads, a lot of people would just assume that it means that, oh, a character can't lie and claim that they're good. They're forced to use the I am dizzy thing. Like, just to, like, clarify what that meant. But no, actually, in mechanical terms, she is not considered to be lying. And I think that's made a little bit clearer by making that not be in the hint section, first of all. Second of all, having a little tooltip here for cannot be. The tooltip would be for cannot be lying, actually. This cannot be would be another like dynamic tooltip, which looks at the word that comes after. Lying, of course, has like a tooltip that overrides that. But in this case, like cannot be lying would have the tooltip like this effect overrides other effects that would cause me to be lying. Uh, and of course, and other characters have. I think is it just the knight? I don't remember. But there's at least one other character that has a cannot be tooltip. Uh, the knight's is cannot be killed, of course, and that is, and in that tooltip, of course, it would be this overrides anything that would cause me to be killed. So it would be the same exact wording, just whatever they cannot be is subbed in. Dynamic tooltip, exactly the same as the number thing for questioning. Speaking of questioning, Dreamer. Questioning 1, daily. Info. If the question is evil, learn their role. Otherwise, learn a random evil roll. Deceit. If the question is good, the learned roll is still random. Innate. I perceive Wretch as a cabbage. So, yeah, a lot of there's more info here, like there's more text here than there perhaps needed to be, but Dreamer is a role that a lot of people don't understand until they go into the Discord and specifically ask, "Hey, what the hell does the Dreamer do?" Uh, yeah, so I think this makes it a little clearer. Um, especially with this hint here. I don't clarify the question's alignment. I only tell you an evil role they might have. So, yes, I think with all this text, you could probably figure out what the Dreamer is doing. I would hope, if you're a new player. Um, and, it's a little bit silly to put this in the ability text just because, like, it's a niche thing. It's like this, but I think like it does have mechanical relevance, so it should be in the ability text rather than the hints text. Druid, questioning 3. Info, learn 1 random outcast among the questioned, or that none of them are outcasts. Deceit, if there is an outcast among the questioned, I claim there are none. Yeah, so all I really did here was clarify that uh, if there's like, a druid can't lie by saying that there's a type of outcast among the questioned that is not actually there unless there's just genuinely no outcast at all. Like, you can't include a drunk and she says Doppelganger. Like, that wouldn't be valid as a lie. If she says Doppelganger, that means there's no outcasts or there is a Doppelganger. I also removed the hint talking about the Wretch interaction, which might have been a mistake, but, the thinking is that such a specific interaction, like, I don't think it sets a great precedent to have that, like, specifically mentioned when it's not, like, a specific thing with the Druid and the Wretch. It's just, like, it's not something that Druid is programmed to specifically do with the Wretch. It's something that just, like, happens as a result of how the Wretch works. And I hope that the way that I've clarified the Wretch's ability will make that clearer and hopefully obsolete the Druid's hint. I suppose the problem then is that people might not look to the Wretch if they see the Druid saying a lie. They might, or saying a truth when it's supposed to be a lie. Right. Just to be clear, the interaction that people are the interaction that I'm talking about is that if you point a Druid at a Wretch and no other outcasts, and the Druid is lying, a lot of the times that Druid will say that there's a Wretch. Because the Druid doesn't see an outcast, because the Wretch registers as an evil. It registers as a minion. So the Druid doesn't see it, even if the Druid herself is evil. She doesn't see that. So she'll say a type of outcast that she doesn't see there. And she knows Wretch is a type of outcast. She just can't recognize the Wretch that's right in front of her. So she'll say, okay, well, Wretch is a valid thing to lie about because that's a type of outcast. So I'll say Wretch. Which confuses people because the result is that she accidentally says the truth when she was trying to lie. Hopefully the way that I've clarified the Wretch should make that okay. I guess you could argue that people that see that will think there's something wrong with the Druid and not think to look at the Wretch. If that ends up still being a problem, then maybe you can put the hint back. I just think it's not a great precedent to have, like, just the one thing, just the one specific interaction, when that's just a result of the rules. And I tried thinking of a way to phrase the hint that was more general, but I couldn't think of a way that wasn't like weirdly difficult to parse and whatnot. Like it's just hard to phrase. Maybe there's a way to do it that I'm not thinking of, but yeah, I've been on this for too long. Let's move on to the next one. Empress. Info. Learn 3 characters. Only one is evil. Deceit. All learned characters are good. This is like, yeah, this is just what you'd expect from yeah, this is just how the Empress ability translates into my system. I don't think I even changed this text. I don't think I changed this text either. I just labeled it as a seat instead of as an if lies hint. So yeah, it's pretty much the same as in the current game. I think there's going to be a few more like that. Enlightened. Info. Learn whether closest evil to me is clockwise, counterclockwise, or equidistant. I thought this phrasing was a little less awkward than what's in the current game. The current game has something like, learn whether closest evil to me is clockwise or counterclockwise. If there's evil and equal distance in both directions, learn equidistant. Which, I don't see why we can't just say clockwise, counterclockwise, or equidistant, and then explain in the hints what equidistant means. Speaking of which, equidistant means that there are evils an equal distance from me in both directions, or that the only evil I see is directly opposite from me. I mean, technically, I should also be saying, or the only evil I see is myself. But that would be kind of confusing, I think, because that sort of thing can be relevant if it's like a game that only has one evil and they are disguised as the Enlightened. That means both clockwise and counterclockwise are lies, and equidistant is the thing that they should be saying. Like, theoretically, if you had a puppet, and only a puppet, which would never happen, of course, but theoretically, if it happened, a puppet Enlightened would say, equidistant, I believe, because they would go all the way around the board one way and find an evil. They'd go all the way around the board the other way and find themselves. Like, yeah, they go all the way around the board both ways and find themselves. Um, but that would be. I think it would be confusing to include that edge case here because most people aren't considering. Because like if you mention that to a new player, especially because Enlightened is a starting card as well, then it would be strange for them because they'd be thinking, well, but the evils lie, so why does it matter in that case? They're just gonna say like saying that there's evil clockwise or counterclockwise of me would be a lie. Yeah, like they'll yeah, it would be too confusing to add that edge case here, I think. I but I am noting that technically my definition here is incomplete, but that's just for the sake of simplicity because most people are going to understand, I think. Fortune teller, questioning 2 daily. Info, learn whether or not there is evil among the questioned. I've been using this as an example a few times, so yeah, questioning 2 daily. That's she refreshes. Yeah, I rephrased this a little bit to specifically refer to the questioned, but it's not really much changed here in terms of like how things are phrased. Gemcrafter, info, learn 1 good character. I think this is exactly the same, just I classified it as info. Info, learn how far I am from closest evil. That's the same again. Questioning 3 daily. Info, learn how many of the questioned are evil. A little bit rephrased to include question, but it's otherwise the same. Judge, questioning 1 daily. Info, learn whether or not the questioned is lying. Hints, characters with no info can still be lying. So, yes, this is hinting at that idea again that lying is a state, not an action. Because a lot of people get hung up on the fact that Judge will point to, like, Bombardier and say that they're lying or telling the truth when the Bombardier is not saying anything at all. I think including this will help people understand that, like, oh, well, it'll point people in the direction of, oh, so lying's not really about the incorrectness of their statement. Hopefully that's the direction it points people in. And because Judge is a fairly early card, maybe it'll set them down the right path to understanding the state, not an action thing. Knight. Skill, I cannot be killed. Innate, if I can't use my skill and I am not evil, you take 4 more damage when you execute me. So, yes, there's the innate here. It's phrased a little bit differently. First of all, instead of if in the current game, it's if I'm corrupted, not if I'm not evil. I wanted to so just the way that I'm setting this up is that the characters disguising as characters inherit whatever abilities the disguise has. So anyone disguising as knight inherits all of this. But most of them are lying, so they don't use the skill. So, but innate functions regardless of lying. So, so most evils inherit the. So like evils inherit this innate when they disguise as the knight. So I need them to not do 4 damage. So I need to specify if I'm not evil. I also specified if I can't use my skill. Which technically isn't necessary. I could just say, if I am not evil, you take 4 more damage when you execute me. But I think for a new player, that's very confusing because one thing is implying that they can't be killed, and one thing is implying that something bad happens if you try to kill them. And it just makes them confused, like, okay, well, can they be killed or not? So I would say, so yeah, so I decided to just include this little bit here if I can't use my skill, just to clarify, like, this is only relevant if the skill doesn't activate for some reason, which currently would only be because the character is corrupted. And then hints, good characters disguised as me still deal 4 more damage when executed if they can't use my skill. This is mostly referring to the drunk right now. In fact, I think, yes, it only refers to the drunk at the moment. It doesn't explicitly say that the fact that Drunk Knight does 6 damage instead of 2 or 9 is not a bug, but I think it at least, like, hints at that. So maybe people are less likely to false report that bug, which isn't a bug, of course. Drunk Knight is supposed to do 6 damage. At least from what I've heard, it's intended. Knitter. Info. Learn how many adjacent pairs of evil there are. That's the same as in the game, I believe. Hints. An evil can be part of 2 pairs if it's adjacent to 2 evils. That clarification is, I think, helpful. A lot of people don't understand how the knitter counts pairs. Because this technically isn't the most like clear way to explain the idea. The clearest way would be to give an example, but the way the hints have been, but the way that the hints are worded has like a specific voice, and I don't want to like I want to I want to also use that same voice, you know? And I don't think that using an example like that really fits with this voice. uh, so I think this is the best I can do to hint at the idea that like 3 evils in a row, for example, count as 2 pairs, without explicitly saying 3 evils in a row count as 2 pairs. Lover. Info, learn how many evils I am adjacent to. Medium, info, learn a good character in its role. Deceit, learned character is disguised and learned role matches the disguise. I thought this was useful clarification because I think in the game she has an if lies hint that says that she's pointing to a disguised character, which uh, it confused me when I saw the medium point to a drunk and say that they were a real drunk. This should clarify that if there's a mismatch between what they appear to be and what they are, then the medium is not lying. Oracle. Info, learn 2 characters and a minion role. One is the learned role, the other is good. Deceit, learned characters are both good. So here I just included the other is good because to our knowledge, that is how the Oracle works. I don't think anyone has ever seen the Oracle point to 2 evils. Uh, the Oracle always points to a minion and a good character. Um, although I just now realized I did miss the fact that she can claim not to see minions if there are genuinely no minions. And if she's lying, she would have to claim that there's a minion of some kind. Okay. Well, I guess that should be included. Uh, like in info, it should be like learn 2 characters and a minion role, or that there are. Now, how would you? I don't know how you. I can't think of this off the top of my head, but uh, okay, okay. Even if you don't include that, just adding this clarification is helpful. That's all I'll say on that. Poet. Info. Learn random information. This is basically the same as what she already says. Hints. I usually copy another role's info. When I do, I follow that role's deceit if I'm lying. So that just means that now you can know the character's deceit because, like, there's nothing in the, like, if you see her giving Empress info, then, you know, nothing about the poet specifies that she has to follow the Empress's deceit. Like, maybe the poet works differently than the Empress when she gives Empress info. Maybe she can lie by saying that there's 2 evils for all you know. Uh, but no, that's not how the poet works. The poet will function exactly the same. Scout. Learn how far a specific evil is from its closest evil. Uh, yeah, that's. I think this is exactly the same as what it says in the game. Nothing to comment on here. Slayer, questioning 1. Skill, if questioned is evil, I execute it. So this is the only instance of a questioning character that doesn't give info, but rather uses their question in a skill. So the phrasing for the questioning tooltip still works here. Uh, abilities that refer to questions don't activate until the question is chosen. Yeah. Hints. My statement is just a record of what you saw for your convenience. It's not wrong when I am lying. I see a lot of people in the Discord talking about, like, oh, we need to fix the Slayer's statement so that it's not a lie when it's truthful, but like, or like it's not truthful when the Slayer's supposed to be lying. But like, I feel like that's being a little bit pedantic. Like, it's fairly clear that the Slayer's just supposed to say that just as, like, okay, maybe there are people who would be confused. And for their sake, this is here to explain that they're not giving incorrect info. They are saying exactly what you tried to do with the Slayer. So if it says that, so if the Slayer says, I couldn't kill this character, then then it doesn't matter whether or not they're lying. That's just a record of what you tried to do so that you don't forget who you used the Slayer on. Like, it's not supposed to be info, really. It's not info. It's not classified as info here. It could potentially, like, something that I considered, but I thought it would probably only be used by the Slayer and maybe not anyone else. But if this is something that other characters might use in the future, you could add a new type of ability called Record, where the tooltip would be something like, if this is like information included in the character's statement, it is only there for your convenience and is not wrong when this character is lying. Or like this information is stated correctly whether or not the character is lying, or something like that. And then here it would be record state. I state who I uh, I state my question and whether or not I was able to kill them or execute them or whatever. That could maybe work. I don't know if it's better to have that record ability or not. It's probably you. I would only do that if other characters would make use of that. And like, I guess one of my character suggestions later on could maybe make use of it. No. I'm confusing that with something else. Never mind. No. I'm confusing that with someone else's character idea. Uh, don't ask me how I managed to do that. Witness. Info. Learn a character that was affected by a curse. So yes, having it be specifically a curse means you don't have to have a gigantic hint that lists every single thing that the witness can point to, because that is not very future-proof. Because I don't know that the compendium, like, the compendium shows like a whole like array of cards. And I don't know that, like, for each page. And I don't know that they're all going to be completely filled with rolls in the final game. But if they are, there's no way that all of the abilities that those characters have that can be seen by the witness would fit into the hint. So just having a term for those kinds of abilities makes sense. And I think it uh, makes sense to specify a curse, like, or like to have, like, it doesn't feel like this is only there for the sake of the witness, because curse still kind of makes sense as like, this is something I'm doing to a specific character. It makes sense that that would be a specific term that's different from an innate ability. Hints, if the effects of a curse are removed from a character, they still count as being affected by a curse. Right now, this just refers to if a corrupted character is cured by the Alchemist. In the future, this could refer to something else. I don't know what else this could refer to other than a corrupted character being cured, but in theory, this could refer to something else. Bombardier, skill, lose if you execute me. Yes, so because it's a skill, evils that are lying don't get this ability. Yeah, if at some point you have some kind of evil that can use skills, then this would need to be reworded. But for now, I think it works. Doppelganger, innate. I disguise as an in-town good villager. I cannot be disguised as. So I've made in-town a keyword. And I made it in town instead of in play, just to like, just to make it a little clearer that it's like a game concept and not just like it's a specific game concept that means a specific thing. Just because like there's a number of things that in play could potentially mean, but in town you have to check what that means, and then you look at the tooltip and it's like, okay, that means this specific thing. And specifically, it means that the character is is in play after Foundation, not counting disguises. And I specified after Foundation because Baker can get rid of a character from the town. So sometimes the Baker converts whoever the doppelganger is copying into a baker, and then the doppelganger is the only character claiming to be that role anymore. Which is especially confusing if that character that got turned into a baker is corrupted. It is just not even saying that they used to be the role that the doppelganger is. I think I saw a bug report with that in the Discord, but it was not a bug. It was just an unintuitive doppelganger baker interaction. Hints: I can use my disguise roll skills if they have one. Just wanted to make that clear because, like, it technically follows from the way that I've phrased the tooltips. I haven't gone over the disguise tooltip yet, but that says that it inherits all abilities. But it's not clear that that happens necessarily if you're like not paying super close attention to it. So I wanted to make it explicitly clear here that this happens. Like, this is just a clarification of the rules. It's not like that the doppelganger is a specific exception. It's just clarifying this is the result of the rules. Effects that only target villagers do not affect me. Again, this is just because people make this mistake sometimes, thinking that the like a lot of people get confused when the doppelganger doesn't get corrupted, because it's not that the doppelganger is immune to corruption. Of course, it's that all effects that currently can corrupt only target villagers. So this is the most future-proof way to phrase it. It's if someone does get confused when the doppelganger doesn't get corrupted, it might require a little more legwork on the player's part, because then they have to like check like, oh, does the poisoner, like they have to think to check the poisoner and be like, oh, does the poisoner only target villagers? Uh, but I think this is the best way. Like it wouldn't be right to say the doppelganger can't get corrupted. Um, Only if people like consistently still get confused, maybe you could have something that's like, I can only be corrupted by effects that corrupt outcasts. But that's but even that's a little heavy-handed, I feel like. I think like in theory this should be fine. Uh I mean, I don't know. Uh I think this is the best way to phrase it. Drunk. Innate, I disguise as a random out-of-town villager. I am corrupted and cannot be cured. I cannot be disguised as. When I am executed, you take 2 damage instead of 5. Um, so yes, out of town is, of course, the complementary, like the counterpart of in town. It means that the character is not present in the game after Foundation, excluding disguises, which, and that phrasing is supposed to clarify that 2 characters disguised as out-of-town villagers can choose the same out-of-town villager, for example. Um, the formatting here is a little bit unfriendly, but I didn't know what else to do, because all of these are innate. It's like he has 4 innate effects, and I don't think any of them should be skills. If he did have a skill, I would need to add another effect, like another innate, that I could still use skills when I am. No, but then he would use the skill of whoever he was copying. So he shouldn't have that. He shouldn't have like, I can still use skills when I'm corrupted thing, because that would not work. Um, or you'd have to like phrase it overly verbose. Yeah, like I don't know how to make this. Like you could line break it, but currently that's not consistent with the way I've been doing the others. Uh, I've only been doing line breaks in between different types of abilities. So because he has just 4 innates, they're just like listed back to back like this. And you could also probably like reorder them, I think. Uh, I figured this was like the most important. I figured this was the best ordering, but you could probably reorder them. The ordering doesn't change anything. It's just how the player reads it. Anyways, Plague Doctor. Questioning 1. Info. Learn whether or not questioned is corrupted. If they are, learn an evil character. Skill. At Foundation, I corrupt 1 good villager. Deceit. Both parts of my info are incorrect. If I am questioned, I claim not to be corrupted, even if that's true. Yeah, so this is all as expected, I think. Deceit, this part I clarified because it's something that's not stated in the game, but it is true that whenever a Plague Doctor is lying, both parts of their info are wrong. And then this part here, that's just clarifying what is meant by the hint that's currently there for Plague Doctor, because Plague Doctor currently has a hint that he says, I don't consider myself to be corrupted, but I don't think that's clear what that means. The point of that is just supposed to be that Plague Doctor pointing itself always says, I'm not corrupted. And I think phrasing it this way makes it a little more clear that that's what's meant. Hints, my skill won't overlap targets with other foundation effects that corrupt. We're going to see this kind of phrasing a lot with the evil characters. A lot of them have phrasing like this because a lot of them have foundation effects. And I want to make clear that foundation effects that like I don't feel like it's necessary to like list somewhere what the ordering is of all the foundation effects. It's not important that Plague Doctor goes after Pooka or after Poisoner. What's important is the end result, which is that the skill doesn't overlap targets with Pooka or Poisoner. Which I think this insinuates without specifically saying, like, I go after Pooka and Poisoner. That would not be very future-proof, because if there's another character with... Because if you get a bunch of characters with corruption later, then you have to specifically say, oh, Plague Doctor comes after all these other characters. And that's... yeah, this... I think this is the best way to phrase it. Wretch. Skill. I am perceived as a random evil minion to all other characters. Innate. I cannot be disguised as. This is pretty much how it's phrased already. The only thing is that I just am assuming that this part is something that would be shut off by corruption if Wretch was ever to become corruptible in the future. I assume that this won't change. That's like that would suck. And obviously corrupting the Wretch wouldn't change this, because this is an innate feature of the role itself rather than an innate feature of the individual character that's on the board. I don't know if that made sense, but yeah. Hints. When others mention a specific minion role, they can be talking about me instead. That is hopefully supposed to clear up the Oracle thing. Like, a lot of people, like, there are two characters that people give false bug reports with when the character is just talking about the Wretch and they forgot how the Wretch works. It's Oracle and Druid. Truthful Oracle will point to Wretch sometimes, and that's still the truth. They aren't lying. And Wretch is, like, this hint is supposed to specifically point to that fact. And then here's the one for the Druid. I am never perceived as good or a wretch by others. Any characters that claim to see me as good or a wretch are lying. So hopefully, people will see that and think, oh, well, this Druid that's claiming to see the Wretch must be lying then. They might not... I don't think this fully explains why that happens, but it at least will get people to think, like, okay, well, that's not supposed to happen if this is a truthful Druid, and it is a thing that can happen with a lying Druid. I am not perceived as lying or disguised, even when perceived as a role that normally is. Just wanted that to be clarified for characters like the Judge. And maybe there will be a time when it's important the disguised thing. This is, I think, mechanically true, because if the Wretch was perceived as disguised as something, then a lying medium would sometimes point to the Wretch, but that never happens. So, yeah, but this part is something that people can sometimes get confused about. Because, you know, if the Wretch registers as like a poisoner, you'd think that that would mean the Wretch would register as lying, but no, it doesn't, because the judge doesn't know. I assume I assume the logic is that the judge doesn't know the poisoner's abilities. He just sees whether or not they are lying. He doesn't know, like, oh, the poisoner's supposed to be lying. He just sees, like, oh, that's the poisoner, and they're not lying. So I'll say they're not lying. Like, that's all it works. That's all it is for the judge. And like other characters too. I think they don't know what abilities each other have, so they don't. Uh, so for things like this, they won't. Like when changing perception won't cause characters to think that other characters have an ability that they don't. And as of right now, lying in disguise is part of the evil character's ability. So characters perceiving the Wretch as a minion won't know that that's supposed to imply that they're lying in disguise. That's how I think it works. That's how and I'm phrasing it as if it works that way. Yeah. Counsellor. Curse. At Foundation, one villager becomes an outcast role. I sit next to them. Innate. I am lying and disguised. This is nothing odd here, I think. This is how you'd expect it to be phrased. I think it's similar to the game already, I think, just with the foundation part and the curse innate. I guess it's the first curse. Uh, Not that it's not noteworthy, I guess. Hints. I'm aware of all outcast roles and can make any of them, but some abilities may prevent me from recognizing my target as an outcast after I make it. Even then, I still sit next to them. So obviously this is about the Wretch. I phrase it in a way that it could potentially refer to other outcasts in the future, but it's the Wretch. It's the Wretch. Um, I've seen someone argue that the Counsellor shouldn't be able to make a Wretch because they shouldn't recognize the Wretch as a type of outcast. I think that's misunderstanding the Wretch's ability. The Wretch character uh, can be is what's not registered correctly. Uh, if the Counsellor is just looking at a list of like all the types of outcasts that exist, he can see that Wretch is on that list because the name Wretch that's on that list, like a name on a list doesn't have an ability. So he looks at the name on the list and he's like, oh, Wretch, that's a type of outcast I can make. I'm going to make a Wretch. And he makes a Wretch. And he's like, huh, that's a minion. Well, that's still the person that I targeted with my curse, so I'm going to sit next to them. That's the logic I'm assuming the Counsellor goes by. Like it doesn't matter that it doesn't register as an outcast anymore. It's still the target of his curse. He's still going to sit next to them. My curse won't overlap targets with other foundation effects that target villagers. Basically, things like the Shaman shouldn't try to duplicate a character if one of them is due to be turned into, like, if one of them is going to be turned into an outcast. The Puppeteer shouldn't try to turn them into a puppet, etc., etc. And it doesn't like again, I phrase it this way just so that it's clear, like or just so that because it doesn't matter what order they go in. all that matters is that Counsellor will just choose someone, and like they'll choose someone that's different from who the Shaman chooses and who the Puppeteer chooses. Although, maybe this isn't entirely accurate now that I think about it. Can the Counsellor's Outcast prevent the Puppeteer from having a valid target? If so, maybe that should be changed? Or maybe that doesn't matter? I don't know. Just random thought that came to me just now. Imp. Innate, I am lying and disguised. So, of course, the noteworthy change here is not anything to do with how I phrase the ability. It is the name. So, I had this idea, and other people, independently of me, have had this idea. I wouldn't be surprised if I wasn't the first person. I probably am not the first person to have this idea. Like, imp just feels like, you know, like it's just a little impish guy. Like, there's no reason that, like, yeah, like, of course, the reasoning for changing the name is that like, having a character named the same thing as the class of characters that they belong to, like, because Counsellor is a type of minion, Poisoner is a type of minion, Puppeteer is a type of minion, Minion is a type of minion? It's a little strange. It can be a bit confusing. It's not, you know, it's not super confusing, but it gets a little hard to talk about sometimes. It's better if he just has a different name. Now I had now I still think Imp is a good idea for the name, but I have been looking into Blood on the Clock Tower just to like, because this game is inspired by Blood on the Clock Tower, and it turns out that Imp is the name of like the basic demon, like in basically any beginner game, the demon will be the Imp, and it's a demon, it's not a minion, so it might be strange to people that are familiar with Blood on the Clock Tower to call this the Imp when the Imp is supposed to be more powerful than this, because the Imp can kill, because it's a demon, and all demons in Blood on the Clock Tower have some way of killing. But, you know, outside of Blood on the Clock Tower, Imp generally implies that they're, like, just very, like, weak kind of evil, like, not particularly strong, just like a little prankster kind of guy. And like he's not like he is kind of like he is evil, but you know, he's not like he's just mischievous. He's not super threatening. Like that's kind of what Imp I think implies to most people, and that's why people are suggesting Imp. If Imp really doesn't sound right, then another suggestion is Fiend. This could be called Fiend, or maybe the larger class of Minion can be renamed to Fiend. I don't know. Just there needs to be some kind of distinction between like this card and the broader class of cards that this belongs to. Twin Imp, innate, I am disguised and lying. So switching lying and disguise was not my idea. That was someone in the Discord, getting Wretched counter, I believe. And I just thought it was funny, and I agree with them. This should definitely be here. There's no there's no mechanical there's no mechanical difference with this. It's just funny. It's just funny. Poisoner. Curse. At Foundation, I corrupt one villager adjacent to me if possible. Innate. I am lying and disguised. Hints. My curse won't overlap targets with other Foundation effects that corrupt. I don't think there's anything here that really needs to be explained. Like, this is the same as, like, the other stuff like this. This is all what you'd expect. I'm gonna have some water. I've been talking for, like, what, over an hour? I need to stop yapping. I need to, like, I need to get to the point here. But I'm apparently quite bad at that. So, apologies. And apologies to my throat for, like, yeah, I don't usually talk for this long at a time. Puppeteer. Curse. At Foundation, I turn a random adjacent villager into a puppet. Evil minion, not lying, can't use skills, if possible. Innate. I am lying and disguised. So, the main thing to point out here is that I've given a bit more clarification on what the puppet is. Because when I first saw this, I thought the puppet was still going to be classified as a villager. I didn't realize it was a type of minion, and I wasn't sure that it was going to count as being disguised. I thought it was like a status. So, just wanted to, like, make it super clear here that it's an evil minion, and it's not lying, and it can't use skills. Hints, the puppet disguises as the villager it used to be. That's, just clarifying that, like, it doesn't choose a new role and follow the usual, like, minion rules for disguising. It always disguises as whatever villager it used to be. It's not going to disguise as an outcast ever. Like, in a way, it follows the demon rules for how to disguise. Because also, yeah, the puppet's original role is always out of town. And that's because the puppet's original role is supposed to be, like, because whoever the puppet was, they should be the only one that was that role for real. And then if they aren't targeted by any other effects, there's no way to get another one in town. So there would be no way to get, like the Doppelganger wouldn't disguise as them, the Shaman wouldn't clone them. Yeah, my curse won't overlap targets with other Foundation effects that target villagers. Won't target the Counselor's Outcast, won't target the the Shaman won't choose this as their clone, etc. Puppet, innate, I am disguised as the villager I used to be, I cannot be lying, and I cannot use skills. Hints, I only appear when created by the Puppeteer. Not really anything super surprising. I guess this is perhaps worth noting, because this is some clarification that I think some people needed for how the puppet works in terms of abilities. The puppet uses info correctly. He gives correct info, but he doesn't use the skills of other characters. And technically, this is not accurate to how the game currently works. There is a skill that the puppet can use. However, that is a bug. currently the puppet can use the Slayer's ability. The puppet can even kill itself using the Slayer's ability. But that's a bug. It's not supposed to be able to use the Slayer's ability at all. So once that's fixed, this will be accurate. Shaman. Curse. At Foundation, I clone a villager. Innate, I am lying and disguised. I definitely phrased this a little bit differently. A lot of the curse effects, or like a lot of the foundation effects, are phrased in like a passive voice. Like in this, like I think this one is, there are 2 of the same villager role in the village, or something like that. I think it's a bit clearer if we like attribute that more directly to the shaman. Like the shaman performs that action. I can see some reasons why you might want to do it the other way, the way that it currently is. But I think this is... I think this is better. Personally. Okay, the hints. My curse won't overlap targets with foundation effects that change the target's role. So that's a little bit different from the other ones that we've seen that are usually like effects that target villagers. Specifically because the shaman is allowed to overlap targets with characters that corrupt. She doesn't care if you corrupt her clones. But she doesn't want you to change one of her clones into an outcast, because then she doesn't have clones anymore. Like, then it's effectively as if her ability didn't go off. My curse activates before foundation effects that corrupt, which is not accurate to how the game is programmed. I understand that. I know some people might like jump out and say that's not how it works. However, it is essentially accurate to how it works, because the real way that it works is just a lot more complicated to explain. And by saying this, you effectively describe the results of what can happen in a way that's simpler than describing what actually happens, which, like, there's no point in explaining the more complicated way just because that's technically how it actually works. The point is to explain it in a way that people can understand the results. And this is consistent with the results of what Shaman can do. Because technically, the Shaman clones after some corruption effects. But what she does is she replaces one of the villagers with whatever she clones. She doesn't copy the corruption of the original thing, and whatever's getting replaced, that corruption is retained in the clone. So, like, if she tries to clone Lover, and she decides to like replace the Hunter with a Lover, if the Hunter was corrupted, the new Lover becomes corrupted. It doesn't affect the old one. And if the old Lover's corrupted, that doesn't force the new Lover to be corrupted. But they can both independently be corrupted. Uh, yeah, see, like that's like it's confusing to like I'm not gonna put all that in the hints because that's way too confusing. Like, I'm sure my explanation, like, you might have understood it, but like like that's not gonna fit in a hint box. There's no way. I'm just saying this. This is effectively the truth. And both copies are considered to be targets of my curse. This is mostly for the witness's benefit, because uh, I think you can have like two witnesses if it's like one real witness and a doppelganger pointing to uh, both clones from a shaman, and that'll be true, I believe. Um, because it wouldn't make sense to like distinguish them because it would be stupid if the witness was lying and said like, "Oh, this character was affected by a curse," when it's like, "Oh, actually, they weren't considered to be affected by a curse. Only the new clone is considered to be affected by a curse." Like, how are you supposed to know which one's the real one? Like that's dumb. So of course, both should be considered targets of the curse because otherwise the witness would be stupid. Which innate. While I am alive, you cannot reveal the last card. I am lying and disguised. Just clarifying while I'm alive in the text itself rather than as part of a hint. And then in the hints, I can still prevent a card from being revealed if a character has been slaughtered. We haven't come across this keyword yet. Basically, this just refers to when Lilis kills someone. I assume other characters will do this as well. It won't just be Lilis, but for right now, it's just Lilis. Um, and this is just to clarify that, like, the card that the witch prevents you from revealing, like the last card, doesn't count the cards that are already slaughtered. Like that's what that's supposed to communicate. Because like in a 9-card game, for example, assuming you don't try to execute someone until you've revealed as many cards as possible, you reveal 4, Lilis kills someone, you reveal 3, and then the witch prevents you from revealing the last one. Uh, that's how it works in the game, and I doubt that's a bug or anything. I assume that's how it's supposed to work. Because otherwise the witch would be kind of useless in a Lilis game. Sometimes she is useless in a Lilis game because in a 10-card game, if you don't execute anyone, uh, the card that she prevents you from flipping just gets killed by Lilis. So in that case, they do kind of overlap their targets, but that's just the Lilis. That's just Lilis not caring about the witch's effect, not the witch failing to consider the dead cards. That was a tangent. I need to stop doing that. Bah, innate. I add 1 fake outcast to the deck view. I am lying and disguised. I don't know if this should be capitalized or not. I think it's capitalized uh, in the current version of the game. It probably should be capitalized. Hint: the outcast I add might be a minion's disguise or might not appear in the village at all. This was just a clarification because it's not clear what he means by fake. And for a long time, I assumed it was just someone that doesn't appear in the village at all. But no, if you're like if you pay attention, then on rare occasion, sometimes a minion does disguise as the fake outcast that Ba creates. Lilis, Nightfall, Curse. Every night while I am alive, I deal 2 damage to you, and, if possible, slaughter a random unrevealed character, prioritizing good. Innate, I am lying and disguised. Was there anything I wanted to point out about this? I think that's... Yeah, just the hints clarify some things here. I cannot slaughter myself, and I will only slaughter evil characters if I have no other choice. Maybe this should be moved to up here somewhere, but it doesn't really fit very well. I think it's okay to just say that, like, slaughtering is something that can't be done to the self, ever. Or maybe, like, demons should have immunity to slaughtering? I'm not sure. And yeah, this just clarifies what is meant by prioritizing good. Not like that she prefers, like she has a higher chance of killing good than of killing evil. It means she will literally not kill evil if she has the choice, but if she's forced to, she will. Pooka, Curse. At Foundation, I attempt to corrupt each villager adjacent to me. Innate, I am lying and disguised. That's about what you'd expect, I think, from how I'm phrasing things. Hints, my curse won't overlap targets with other Foundation effects that corrupt. You've seen this before, you know what it means. And that's the last card, I believe. Yes, so here are some more keywords. There were some keywords in there that I hadn't explained yet, or like, there were some keywords that we came across in there that I hadn't explained at the start. So cure, remove corruption from a corrupted character. You know, I just wanted to include the tooltip for this, just for completeness. Cannot be X. The effect overrides all effects that would cause me to be X. Perceive. Other characters' abilities treat me as having the perceived traits. Oh, I forgot to mention. I meant to say this when I reached the Wretch. I replaced register with perceive because register sounds like a very like mechanical kind of term, which I felt didn't fit the voice very well. And I know that that's how it's phrased in Blood on the Clock Tower. But I think in this case we can get away with calling it perceive or perceived, depending, you know, this is one I'm willing to conjugate. This isn't like lying. Range X, X cards or fewer away from me in either direction. Slaughter, killed without player input. Slaughtered characters can't be revealed. I mean, I assume that there's no point for the evils to kill characters that are revealed, I think, but technically this does leave room for characters that are already revealed to be killed, you know, in case there could be justification for doing that. I don't know why you would want to do that, but there might be some demon ability in the future where that would be a good idea to have them kill unrevealed characters, and there's room for that here, but it specifies here that slaughtered characters can't be revealed. In town, role that is present after Foundation, not counting disguises. Out of town, role that is absent after Foundation, not counting disguises. I think I colored this wrong. Uh, that that's not important. Yeah. So uh, yeah, basically just explaining like what is meant by in town and out of town because these words should be like used more like just because it's important to know things like how the demons disguise versus how minions disguise. Like if you want to play well, it's important to know that, and that should be something that is clarified to the player. Rephrase tooltips. Uh, this is mostly just for completeness. Most of these are like similar to what's already in the game. Um, the main thing that's different here is like this is the one that is the most changed. Because first of all, I removed the probability that was mentioned here because I didn't think that was important. I don't think it's important how often they disguise as in-town characters versus out-of-town characters, just that they have both options. And also that they can disguise as outcasts. I don't think the probability of that is important either, although that's not stated in-game. You can see it in the patch notes somewhere, but it's not stated in-game. Yeah, and of course it's all using the in-town, out-of-town keywords. Here's some more rephrase tooltips. Most of these are pretty similar to what's in the game already as well. I actually forget what the differences are for good and evil. I think I might have just like kind of trimmed the fat on those a little bit. Or did I? Maybe these are longer. I don't remember. I don't remember at all. I just remember when executed, you take 5 damage is a detail that's already there. And so is this. Eliminate all evil to save the village. Disguised. Pretends to be a different role, inheriting all of its abilities. Characters can see through disguises. So I just wanted to like make that super clear that disguised characters inherit the abilities of whatever they disguise as, and characters can see through disguises. So like unlike perception, like unlike when you perceive a character as something they're not, disguise does not affect how characters see each other. They know they basically know what's on the board exactly. Um, yeah, I think the most that right. I think mostly I was just rephrasing these to use lying in this particular conjugation and not like uh and not like I think it's usually like here it's like usually lies and disguise like usually lies and disguises. I phrase it as usually lying and disguised instead. Like, I think that's like a lot of what I was doing with these tooltips. Right. If evil can be corrupted, because in the future, currently, there's no way for evil to be corrupted. Like minions and demons don't have any way of being corrupted. But maybe that can happen in the future. And if so, there is a bit of a hole in my current system here, which is that there's no room for an ability that is shut off by corruption, but still detected by the witness, assuming that all curses would be shut off by corruption, which I assume they would be. Um, sorry, there's no room for an ability that is shut off by corruption, but also not detected by the witness, even when it's normally used. So abilities like that can be Mischief, an evil ability that affects the village. It's yeah, just something that I think would need to be there if we are able to get corrupted evils in the future, just so that we know. Because currently, like anything that's not a curse, I just shoved into innate. But innate, I think, needs to not be affected by corruption, and curse would be. And there needs to be like that middle ground where it's like, here's something that the witness doesn't detect, but can still be shut off by corruption. So I'm not going to go through all of the evils with this in mind. I'm just going to give this example of what the witch would look like using Mischief as an ability type. Her While I Am Alive, You Cannot Reveal the Last Card ability is now classified as Mischief instead of innate, so that way it would be shut off by corruption. I assume that evils still lie when they're corrupted, because corruption generally causes lying. And if this is based on Blood on the Clock Tower, there's no reason that a corrupted evil wouldn't still lie. Okay, so it's been an hour and 46 minutes, almost an hour 47. And we're finally through all of the rephrased characters, and these other sections aren't going to take nearly as long, I promise. You could probably see that from the length of the video. Okay, character statement changes. Basically, this is for what the character says, usually like when you flip them over, but sometimes after questioning. Like how they actually say that in their little speech bubble. Some of those statements need to be changed. Also, there are some hint arrow things that there's like a couple hint arrow things that need to be changed, and I thought this was a better place to put them than in. I thought this was the best place to put them. And we're actually going to start with a hint arrow thing. The architect. If we're going to be consistent, so if that hint that I changed earlier, the one where you point down the middle, or the one where you like don't consider the middle. Yeah, the one where you where the hint that said characters in the middle are excluded from both halves. That hint should have its hint arrows be consistent with that hint. So if the architect says the right side is more evil, the hint arrows should point here, not also to the middles. Obviously, this is only if this change is made. If that change to the hint is made. If that hint is left as it is, then of course you keep the hint arrows as they are. Obviously, just pointing out that that change to the hint would also require this change to the hint arrows. Bard. Okay, here's an actual statement change, and I think a lot of people will know what this is. I say a lot of people as if a lot of people are going to watch this video, but I don't think I don't think it's going to be a lot of people. Yeah, I'm sure that all three of you watching this video know what I'm talking about. The bard should say closest corrupted character is 2 cards away, for example. Currently, she'll say something like corrupted character is 2 cards away. And people get confused because when the bard is lying, sometimes there really is a corrupted character 2 cards away. But it's still a lie because that's not the closest corrupted character. There's actually a corrupted character 1 away from the bard in this example. So, yeah, just having closest here means people will stop being confused when a lying bard actually points to a corrupted character, because it's not wrong for her to do that. Like, it's not like it could still be a lie that she does that if it's not the closest corrupted character. Bishop. When the bishop makes his statement, he should say these 3 words in order. Like, like I don't know. Like, there's no reason, right, for them to be randomized. Like, it should just be in this order every time, because seeing them randomized can make you think like, oh, there's some sort of pattern. There's like a connection between the words and the numbers, and like you can know which one is which somehow, or something. I don't know. But just to like nip that idea in the bud, I think it should just always be ordered villager, outcast, minion, or villager, outcast, demon, and like omit outcast if there's no outcast. And maybe these should be in numerical order while we're at it. I don't care about that as much, but I know that bothers some people. If you change that, you should change it for Empress as well. Probably no need to change it for like Jester or Fortune Teller, because that's just like, because if that's out of order, that's the player's fault. Knitter. She should say, there is one pair of evil when there is one pair of evil. Currently, she says there is only one pair of evil, which I found confusing when I first played this game, because I assumed what that meant was, because I had seen the scout say there is only one evil. And when the scout says there's only one evil, what he means is my ability isn't functioning properly, because, or like my ability can't function meaningfully in this environment because I don't have 2 evils to point to the distance between. So when Knitter says there's only one pair of evil, my thought was, oh, the Knitter can't use her ability meaningfully in this setup for some reason. I don't see why that prevents her from using her ability, but I must just not be understanding what her ability actually does. So for a long time, I was just not using the Knitter's information at all, because I thought that it was like that she wasn't able to use her ability properly. Eventually, I picked up on the fact that it just meant that there's one pair of evil, but I think we can avoid that confusion by removing the word only here. You should just say there is one pair of evil. Medium. I hinted at this a little bit earlier. I got confused one time when the medium pointed. Like the first time I saw the medium point to a drunk, I got confused what that meant. She should say it like this instead, I think. Number 4 is actually a drunk. I say she, but this could be a he. And honestly, I can never tell with these. Like, I thought the knight was a girl. I thought the jester was a girl. But you know, if you look in their if you right click on them, they have quotes that specifically use male pronouns. So those are both guys. Medium doesn't specify in their text thing, but I I mean, I don't know. I I'm apparently bad at knowing what genders characters are in this particular game. Uh, my apologies to the medium for potentially misgendering them. I don't know if I have done that. Maybe this is a girl, and I've had it right the whole time, or maybe I've been misgendering them. I have no idea. Poet. Closest evil is clockwise, said in Enlightened, is what I think that the poet should say, because this is pointing to the kind of information that she's saying. Like, I think she should reference the role whose info she's copying. And the reason for that is just so that you can be clear, like, oh, this is this kind of character's information, so that you know what to, like, check the deceit rules for. And currently there's no good way to do that in game, but I have suggestions that will alleviate that. So don't worry, I thought of that. But I think this would just be useful anyways, just so that you can know, especially in the future once there's more and more roles. Some characters might say similar sounding information, and it might not be clear which one the poet is actually talking about. And I am aware that the poet sometimes draws from the bounty hunter, who is an unused role that it will probably not actually be. I think I've heard that the bounty hunter won't be implemented, but the poet will still be able to call on the bounty hunter's information anyways. So in that case, I think she should just say her own role for that one. Oh, and I'm specifically using like an enlightened and a poet instead of the enlightened and the poet, just so that people don't think that this has anything to do with the lying status of any actual enlightens that might be on the board. Because, like, that's not what this is supposed to entail. Like, it's not supposed to have anything to do with that. It's just supposed to be like, hey, this is enlightened information. This is poet information, I guess. Or like, this is medium information, so that you can look up, like, okay, well, how do they lie? Also, while we're here, when the poet is using the enlightened's information, she should have the hint arrows that the enlightened does. Her hint arrows work properly when she's copying any other character, as far as I'm aware. Like, if it's Empress, I'm pretty sure that her hint arrows point to the 3 that she's accusing, the same way that the Empress's hint arrows work. But for Enlightened in particular, the poet does not generate these hint arrows, which, it's theoretically okay. Like, I know which way is clockwise and which way is not. But the hint arrows help so that I don't have to, I like to have the hint arrows so I don't have to, like, think too hard about, like, what the word means, which sounds kind of stupid when I say it out loud, but I'm sure this would help other people too. I'm sure I'm not the only one. Scout. You all know what I'm gonna say here. Scout needs to use the word it's, because everybody would, because the word it's isn't here in the current version, and everybody assumes when they first play the game that the scout is talking about, saying, like, that the statement would mean that Pooka is 3 cards away from the evil that is closest to the scout. He actually means that Pooka is 3 cards away from the evil closest to Pooka. This is a mistake that lots of people make, and it can be avoided with just this one word. And yeah, that's it. Witness. This is not so much that there's anything wrong with what the witness says right now, just being consistent with the wording that I have suggested so far. He should say that they were cursed instead of affected by an evil. Um, obviously, if my whole wording system is not utilized, then there would be no reason to phrase it this way. Like, the current phrasing is fine. Just if that is adopted, then as a result, this should need to be changed as well. Plague Doctor. I'm not the only one to think this. I've seen this suggested a few times. Plague Doctor should say the corrupted character first, instead of the evil character and then the corrupted character. Because you asked him about, because like in this situation, you asked him about 8. So he should tell you about 8 first. And then, because that gives you that information, he should give you then this extra information after. Because you don't, like, it kind of follows the logical flow. Like, first you need this character to be corrupted before you can get this information. Like, you want the confirmation that this is corrupted before you get told who the evil is. Like, that just follows the logical flow of how people think a little better. Other non-gameplay changes. So just a few, like these are things that wouldn't, really affect the actual gameplay, but are just, some other things I think would be nice. Tutorial explicitly points out to right-click on cards, using a card with useful deceit or hints that aren't visible in the tooltip, e.g. Empress or Bishop. Currently, it is very easy to miss the right-click thing for a long time. And then once you do realize, oh, I can actually right-click on these cards for more information, there's a pretty good chance, or well, not a great chance, but there's some chance that you choose a card where that doesn't give you anything useful. Like if you right-click on Gemcrafter, it's like, oh, there's no new information here. It's just the little flavor text quote and nothing else. Like, there's no reason. As far as game, I can do that if I'm curious about their flavor text, but I'm not getting anything useful out of right-clicking on this character. So I thought it would be nice if the tutorial, first of all, pointed out that you can do that you can right-click at all. And second of all, did it with a character, force you to right-click on a character that has, useful deceit or hints. So that you can know that, oh, there actually is a reason to right-click on the cards. There's information here that I don't get from any other source. Make cards right-clickable when unlocked. Oh, I forgot to change this. I've actually already confirmed that this doesn't happen. Yes, right. Cards, when you unlock a card, it shows you, you've unlocked the witness, for example, and you can't right-click on the witness to see, all the details of what he does. It gives you, the tooltip version of his ability underneath him, so that you know, what he does. But you can't, if you have a question about how he works, you have to remember later on to clarify that when you see him later. It would be nice, I think, if they could be right-clicked as soon as they're unlocked, if you wanted to. Compendium contains glossary. I think that all of the words that have tooltips should be compiled into a glossary in the compendium. The main benefit of that, I think, is just that there's a lot of information in the tooltips that I think people would Like if you just see the word on its own, you might think, yeah, okay, I know what that means. And like I don't need to look at the tooltip for it. But then if you just get the chance to look at all the tooltips all in one place, you might see like, oh, actually there's some information here that I didn't know. Or oh, there's some or maybe like you read a tooltip, you're like, okay, I get that. And then but then you missed some implication of that tooltip. I'm trying to think of a good example. I can't think of a good example, but maybe you've like read the tooltip once, thought you understood it, and then you don't look at it again. But being able to just like browse through the glossary lets you revisit those old tooltips without having to specifically go out of your way to look for that specific tooltip. And then you can be like, oh, right, yeah, okay. Or if, there's sometimes you have like nested like keywords, like a keyword is inside a tooltip, but you can't have nested tooltips. So if you see that and you don't want to go find a card that has that word, you should just be able to go to the glossary to look it up. Additionally, Compendium should be accessible during gameplay. That means that you can look up the glossary during gameplay, and it means, with the thing I suggested for the poet, where she says what role she's copying, you can look up how that role works in the middle of a game. Tutorial explains the distinction between minions and demons, then says this can be reviewed in the glossary. A lot of people did not, like I spent a while not knowing that demons always disguised as out-of-town villagers because I didn't look at that tooltip because I didn't even realize that that was like a tooltip I could look at. I didn't realize, well, okay, it's not that I didn't realize. It's just that I didn't think to look at it. I didn't think that it would be helpful to look at it. I didn't know it would give useful information. So pointing out that this distinction exists, first of all, in the tutorial would help because that's very useful information to have. Second of all, it sort of justifies why the player might go to the glossary so that they can like review all this kind of information that they might have missed. And thirdly, there's no good way to explain to the player that there is a tooltip for minions and demons like underneath the cards. If you right click on a card, then it'll say like their alignment and their character type underneath them. And there's no good way to point out like this is where you can review what a minion does or what a demon does. Like it's easier to just say there's a glossary. Look at that. Look at the glossary if you don't remember this information. Compendium contains tips section that explains unintuitive concepts or otherwise unstated information. Basically just a total failsafe of like, if no one ever understands the Druid Wretch thing, just say in the tips section that a Druid can't see a Wretch. You could also do things here like explicitly state that lying is a state and not an action, so that that's something that players understand, because I think if players understood that, it would really help them understand what these cards are doing, because a lot of people get confused on that. Gameplay changes. I should take a sip of water first. Changes that would actually affect gameplay. Mostly they're fairly minor, though. A lot of these changes have to do with something that I would call insider information. Basically, there are certain things that are known in the Discord that aren't stated anywhere in the game. And if you know these things, they help you play the game better. But it's not fair to players that aren't like, involving themselves in the community, but still like the game, to have this distinction. And And some of it has already been addressed with like the deceits and like other clarifications, like the Oracle. The Oracle, I pointed out that she points to one minion and one good. Like that was insider information. But I don't think that. But like there are some things where there's no reason to include them in the rules. It really should just be that the way that the cards work themselves should be changed so that this insider information isn't a problem. And there's also a couple of other things. Like I think the first change here is for the Alchemist, and this is not about insider information. This is just a buff that the Alchemist needs. Make him immune to corruption. Like we all know that Alchemist rarely does his job because like he's weighted to appear more often in boards that have more corruption causing characters. So the more corruption there is on the board, the more likely he is to appear. But the more corruption there is on the board, the more likely he is to get corrupted and not do his freaking job. The Alchemist is also just like generally confusing, I find. Like even when he does do something, it's honestly not helpful information. Like it's just confusing, especially if he gets hidden somehow and like I can't like if he gets turned to a baker or he gets killed by Lilis, then you don't see that he cured someone or you don't so like it's a lot easier, I think. This change doesn't like alleviate those problems I had. Like those will still happen, of course, but it means the Alchemist is more likely to actually cure people, and people will stop like being so because there are bug reports where people are like, why wasn't this character corrupted? And it's like there's an alchemist right there because people forget that the alchemist can do something. Like he should get a little bit of a buff, I think, so that he can at least do his job a little more often so that people don't find it as jarring when he actually cures someone. It would also clear up the confusing situation where there's two alchemists and one cures the other, and whether or not that alchemist then cures someone depends on what order the alchemists went in. Because, it's weird to have a truthful alchemist that's not a puppet, but he didn't cure anyone when there were people near him to cure. Like, I understand why that happens, and I don't think it's necessarily wrong, but I feel like that's not adding enough. I don't think it would just be better if the alchemist wasn't corruptible. So here's what his new ability text would be. I removed the hint about what happens about him not being able to cure himself. Just now there's an innate. When I am a villager, I cannot be corrupted. This is specifically to refer to the fact that a drunk can still be corrupted if he disguises as the alchemist. Technically, he doesn't need... No. You do need to have this because two cannot be's kind of... No, yeah, this would override the drunk's corruptedness. Yeah, so it needs to be phrased this way. But something else about the alchemist that is insider information is the order that they activate in. And I think that the alchemist should activate in a random order, which would add a bit more confusion to the alchemist, but It's only adding confusion to the people that have the insider info. For people that don't have the insider info, they're not any more confused than they already were. If the alchemists just go in any random order. And then one more thing about the alchemist, but also kind of about the knitter. It's related. They should be able to claim bigger numbers when they're lying, because currently certain big numbers are things that they are programmed not to say when they're lying because they're so unlikely to be true. Like, it usually would come across as a super obvious lie. But I think on at least rare occasions, they should say such big numbers. The knitter at least has a little bit more logic to her. Like, she's looking at the deck view to generate what her maximum she's allowed to say is, but she's failing to account for the puppet and the wretch when she does that. And so, like, a real knitter can say 4 pairs very rarely. A lying knitter will never say 4 pairs. Just as very rarely a truthful alchemist can cure 3 characters and say that he's cured 3 characters. But a lying alchemist will never say that because that's just not believable. Like how often is an alchemist going to cure 3? Not very often. But like when a character makes like a bold statement like this, you should be doubting it. Like your first instinct should be, well, that's doubtful. Do we really think the alchemist cured 3? Do we really think there's 4 pairs of evil? But with this insider information, you instantly know that these like bold claims that should be dubious are definitely true. You know that they're telling the truth, and you have like a huge piece of information. So I think, at least on rare occasions, they should tell those lying alchemists and lying knitters should tell those lies. Maybe Knitter needs to just like consider the puppet and the wretch when she's deciding what her maximum number is. Because I think if she did that, then she'd be fine. And Alchemist just needs to. Alchemist, I guess, should just like consider how many corruption sources there are on the board, and then say up to that number. Maybe that would have to change depending on the ways the characters can corrupt in the future. I don't know. Bishop. Lying bishops should sometimes, or maybe all the time, I'm not sure, not claim to see an outcast if they can't see one. This is partially to do with insider information, but it's mostly just that it's a really obvious lie if you know that the only outcast on the board is a wretch, and a bishop claims to see an outcast. And also, if you see a bishop claim not to see an outcast, you know that's truthful because a lying bishop will claim that they saw an outcast even if there isn't one. So that's why it's maybe sometimes, because maybe you want a lying bishop to sometimes say that there was an outcast when there isn't one, just because sometimes it might not be clear whether or not there is one. If there's like, Lilis killing people and there's like in the future, it might not be clear whether or not there's a Counsellor on the board, so it might not be clear whether or not there's an additional outcast. Maybe the witch hid the wretch, so you know there's an outcast somewhere, but you don't know what kind, and so you don't know whether or not the bishop is supposed to be claiming that there is one or not. So, yeah, this version of the hint is what it would look like if he always said that there was no outcast when there's no outcast. but maybe it should be sometimes. And then I'm not sure how you would phrase the hint when it's sometimes, but you could probably just say like when I'm when I'm not lying, I exclude character types I can't find. When I'm lying, I do sometimes. I don't know. Dreamer. Uh, she's pretty weak. We can make her a little bit stronger. Um, yeah, like there's rare occasions where Dreamer can actually do something when you know that when you know whether or not she's lying. Um, but most of the time, like her information isn't reliable. When you usually just use her to self-confirm. Um, like once you've killed someone, or if you see the wretch and you just point to them and she says it's a cabbage, or if she doesn't say that, you know that she's lying. So my suggestion, which one, I'm not the first person to come up with this. I did come up with it independently, but I'm not the first person, and I'm not the last person. Uh, Two is apparently just the way that the Dreamer already worked in Blood on the Clock Tower. Is learn a good role and an evil role. One of them is the questions role. Uh, I think that's, it's not a lot stronger. I wanted to keep the vibe of the Dreamer, so this was my suggestion. Um, so yeah, she will. Um, so if she's lying, they're both going to be wrong, of course, and that means that, um, like, if you were pointing to a real baker, for example, she would say drunk or doppelganger. And then her evil roll will just be random. Um, and, I think that this is, like, you can get some interesting information here. Like, if you learn that a character is drunk or blah or something like that, then you know, okay, well, this character's always lying then if the dreamer's telling the truth. Um, if you get that they're a doppelganger or something else, then you might be able to immediately tell, okay, well, they're not a doppelganger, so either they're this particular evil or the dreamer's lying. And knowing what the particular evil is can be helpful sometimes. Um, if it's like Pooka or something, that's Pooka's very has some pretty clear tells. Uh, and yeah, this does mean the dreamer can self-confirm more often, but I think that it's a little better because it feels a bit more satisfying to self-confirm on information that you deduced but haven't like been able to truly confirm. Like if you confirm that someone's good, like if you figure out that like this is the doppelganger, for example, like that's information that you can't like, or even just that someone isn't a doppelganger. That's information that you can't confirm by stabbing them, or like you shouldn't do that most of the time, at least. Um, so it's helpful, or sorry, it feels better to like leverage that deduction that you don't have confirmation on to deduce that the dreamer is like whether or not the dreamer's telling the truth than it is to just like, oh, well, there's a dead body. and this is just like a dead obvious, like, she's obviously lying or not. Or like point her at the wretch. Like this is like if she says cabbage, she's fine. So like I think this is it's not much stronger. Dreamer would still be weak with this, but I don't think she would be as weak. She would have more like she already has niche use cases. She would have more of them. And like the information could still like be interesting. It'd still be like still do some cool things if you like uh and you can feel clever for using the dreamer in like there's more opportunities for the player to feel clever doing neat things with the dreamer and coming up with like neat ways to use them and like to use that information. Okay, Empress, Gemcrafter, Medium. They should stop pointing to themselves and they should be excluded from games where they might be forced to. Um, partially about insider information. Um, mostly with Empress, it's mostly about insider information. For Gemcrafter and Medium, it's mostly about like they're telling very obvious lies when they do that. Although that's also kind of about insider information. Um, yeah, so currently, Empress only points to herself when she is corrupted or a puppet. Gemcrafter only points to herself if she has no other choice, and Medium only points to herself if she has no other choice. Um, so for Empress, I think there's never a need for her to point to herself currently. Maybe that would change in the future. But for right now, as long as there are confirmed 4 perceivable good characters on the board, she should never have to point to herself. Like even if she's corrupt, she wouldn't. She has 3 characters besides herself to point to. Gemcrafter is a little bit tricky because she's in the tutorial. So I think for Gemcrafter, you could have like a special exception for the tutorial where she's just never the evil. I don't think insider information matters quite so much in those tutorial rounds because, like, as long as it's not something that the player could pick up on. Because that could theoretically happen by random chance that the evil just happens to never choose Gemcrafter. Um, and then once you unlock, like, Twin Minion, or Twin Imp, or Twin Fiend, or whatever we're calling it, then the Gemcrafter should only appear when there are 2 evils. Because if she's evil, it would be nice if she didn't point to herself. And if she's the only evil on the board, like if there's only one evil on the board, she shouldn't be in the game, except for those tutorial rounds where she's prevented from being evil. That's how I think that should be handled. Uh, and obviously I wouldn't suggest removing Gemcrafter from the tutorial because like she's such a simple card. It's a very good tutorial card. Like it's so useful. Um, Medium. Uh, I don't remember when the medium is unlocked. Think you can. I think you don't need to make the same kind of like exception for medium as you do with Gemcrafter. I think I don't remember though. But basically, she should just not appear if she's the only disguise. If there's only one disguising character, because if that disguising character is like just the one evil on the board, then they're forced to point to themselves, and that's kind of lame. And anyone with the insider info immediately knows that they're evil and like yeah, it's just kind of boring. Uh, so she should be excluded from games where she might be prevented, where she might need to point to herself. Scout. Okay, this is admittedly potentially a bad idea, but it is technically insider information that the scout will never point to the wretch as his specific evil. So I think the scout should maybe point to wretch sometimes. Just to clarify what I mean, take this board state, for example. Scout can say Shaman is 2 cards away from its closest evil. And, like, that's fine. Like, because this is Shaman, and then this is registering as evil. He thinks that the Wretch is 2 away. That's fine. Assuming all these other cards are good. So he currently can do this. He can point to the Wretch as being the closest evil. Something he currently can't say, but I'm suggesting maybe he should say because of this insider information thing, is Shaman is 1 card away from his closest evil. By mistaking the Wretch for the Shaman, and it being 1 card away. Now, that might be a bad idea. It might be a bad idea. But I just don't like the insider information thing on principle. Like, obviously, I don't think that every single mechanic of the game should be, like, laid out transparently for everyone to see. Just that anything that, like, works in a hidden way should not be something the player can use to inform themselves on the board state. So, like, if Empress just never pointed to herself, period, then, like, the player's not learning anything by knowing that, because because the way it currently works, if she does point to herself, you know that she's saying that she's puppet or corrupted, just with this insider information. And so this is technically also insider information that this can't happen, because there's nothing about the rules that says that this can't happen. If there's going to be any insider information, I would say this is the most justifiable one. But, like, I do have a later suggestion that would maybe make this a little bit more reasonable to include as a possible statement for the scout. Right, so just something to consider. The Doppelganger. So, okay, I'm kind of making assumptions on how the Doppelganger works. I don't actually know, of course. Doppelganger should choose their disguise roll earlier and make their target immune to effects that would change their roll. So I do mean this in terms of, like, because I'm assuming the reason the Doppelganger... It's known that when the Doppelganger copies the Alchemist, that the Doppelganger will act after the real Alchemists. And I assume it's because the Doppelganger is choosing their disguise after the Alchemists have acted. So I'm saying the Doppelganger should choose earlier, and then just, like, maybe not make their target immune. That's maybe not right, because obviously there shouldn't be, like... Because, like, if that would prevent the Puppeteer from making a puppet, that would be a problem. But, like, Doppelganger should choose someone that, like, they know won't be targeted, I guess, by other effects. If that's at all possible. Yeah, that's all I want to say on that. Mostly just I want Doppelganger Alchemists to be able to be in that random ordering, and also like if there's any other game start effects, then Doppelganger should also be in the like random ordering of like which one goes first, or like which one like what order characters that have the same ability because they're like copying they're the same character or copying the same character, what order they do their abilities in. And like Doppelganger should be randomized the same as everyone else and shouldn't just necessarily act last. Uh oh. Okay, something was weird with my I I did the effect wrong there, I guess. Okay, whoops. Oh well. Oh well. Bah. When a minion chooses to disguise as an outcast, Ba should retroactively choose that as his fake outcast. What do I mean by this? Um, so basically, it is currently possible. Let's say you have just a one outcast game, and Ba is there, and there's one other minion who chooses to disguise as an outcast. Um, you will see in the deck view 3 outcasts. You will see the actual outcast that's there for real. You will see the outcast that the minion has chosen to disguise as, and you will see the fake outcast added by Ba. In that situation, this is kind of insider information, but you would immediately know that the uh, that the minion is disguised as an outcast. And if only one of the options in, like, if you see your 3 outcasts are like Wretch, Bombardier, and Drunk, then you can safely stab the Bombardier as soon as you see it. Which you shouldn't feel safe stabbing a Bombardier, I think. But if you feel safe stabbing a Bombardier, like before even revealing all the cards, then I think something's wrong. Um, yeah, so what I'm saying here is that if a minion has chosen to disguise as the Bombardier, then Ba should be like, oh, there's already a fake outcast on the board. I'm going to pretend that's my fake outcast. So then the player doesn't know, is the Bombardier here because that's the real outcast? Because there's a minion disguising as them, or because Ba has just added that outcast as a fake. Then when you reveal the board and you see that the Bombardier is there, then it's like, well, okay, I see that there's also supposed to be a drunk here, but I don't know that there's a drunk because that could be the fake outcast added by Ba, or there could be a drunk and the Bombardier is just a minion, and that's Ba's fake outcast. Like, it adds a little bit, like, the whole point of Ba is to make it unclear what outcasts are in play. So this makes it less clear what outcasts are in play, because sometimes if things line up correctly, you can immediately tell what outcasts are real and what outcasts aren't. Or at least like you can sometimes tell that like there's a minion disguised as an outcast. Yeah, if you ever have a situation where you can flip Bombardier as your first card and immediately feel safe stabbing that, there's probably something wrong. Oh, okay, yeah, I messed up the effects on that one too. Oh well. Okay, character ideas. So, I had a few character ideas. One thing I was thinking is, what if we had dogs? What if there were dogs? I thought there should be dogs, maybe? Here's a dog. Info. Watchdog. Info. I choose one random adjacent character. Learn whether or not my chosen character is evil or corrupted. I growl if they are. Innate. I cannot be disguised as. So the idea with these dogs is there's no disguising with them, because disguising as a dog is difficult, both in terms as disguising yourself as a dog is difficult, and disguising is difficult when you are a dog. So, uh, so dogs are not disguised in any way. So that's already very powerful to have a known good character like this. Also, forgive the art. I just wanted to draw this like real quickly. I wasn't I can draw better than this, I think, but I was trying to not take a super long time making this, so I just kind of like rushed this art, and I didn't even make art for all the characters, just some. Like I gave up at some point. Like drawing the dogs are a bit easier. The more human characters are difficult, and I just didn't do those. Um, but yeah, this is a knowing that this is a villager and that it's good is in itself incredibly powerful. So I thought that its info should be really not that helpful. Um, so basically, she chooses someone at random that's adjacent to her, and if her chosen character is evil or corrupted, she'll growl. If not, she'll make some other like dog sounds, I guess. Um, so, and she doesn't clarify which character she chose, and if she's lying, then which could happen if she's corrupted. She is corruptible. Um, then the response is only wrong for the character that she chose. If she's, because obviously, if she's adjacent to one character, that's evil corrupted, and one character that's neither evil nor corrupted, then there's no way for her to lie. That like makes sense for both of them. Uh, she's just going to like choose, like she just chooses one and lies about them by like growling if they're good and not corrupted, or like not growling if they are evil or corrupted. Uh, yeah, I put these hints here because I thought that these were like the things that would be the most unclear with this character. Um, yeah, so like it's like just being a known good villager is very powerful. Um, the info is like it's not unusable, but it's like not great info, which is like kind of the which is like I think helps to balance it a little bit. Okay, next one. I decided to make a dog of each of the 4 character types. So here's our Outcast dog, Stray Dog. Skill, at Foundation, I silence 1 adjacent villager. Innate, I cannot be disguised as. And the tooltip for silence would be, cannot give info or choose questioned. So the idea would be, so once again, the Stray Dog is a confirmed good, which is itself very powerful. So there's a trade-off here that the Stray Dog will silence a villager next to them, so you can't learn their information. There is still some... Oh, I forgot to say if possible. Yeah, I silence 1 adjacent villager if possible. Oh, it's fine. Because technically the Stray Dog could be surrounded by evils, and he won't silence those. And he can't silence a Doppelganger or a Drunk either. But he can silence a villager. You can't find out what they are saying. You can't find out if they're giving lying info, then you would know that they're corrupted, but you can't tell because you don't know what they're saying. And a silenced character should always give like a 3 dot like their statement should just be like an ellipsis, like 3 dots, just so that it's always clear that they're being silenced, even if there's someone like the knight that doesn't have any statement normally. Or if it's like the fortune teller who like wouldn't give their statement until you choose questions. Yeah, so maybe it's a bit powerful because maybe it's a bit too powerful because you get to learn you learn the stray dog is good. You also learn that the adjacent villager is really a villager. The trade-off is just that you then don't get that villager's information. Or if the stray dog doesn't silence anyone, you know that they're adjacent to 2 evils or outcasts. So maybe that's too powerful. I'm not sure what the best way to balance that would be. Just an idea. I thought it might be cool. I'd have to actually like see it in a game to know if it's like balanced, I guess. Hellhound. Innate. Disguised evils adjacent to me are perceived as the role and alignment they are disguised as. So the Hellhound doesn't make a statement, it doesn't disguise, and it's not lying. Because it's a dog. So I thought that a good trade-off here would be that you get this sort of like doubt about the Hellhound's neighbors, and maybe that he could just be adjacent to 2 good characters. Like that's totally possible. There's nothing in the ability that requires the Hellhound to be adjacent to evils. Just that if there are evils adjacent to the Hellhound, those evils will be perceived as however they're disguised. So you need to work out, like, you need to kind of rule out everyone else and then decide this character seems like they're lying, and the only explanation that seems to exist here is that they're evil. So, like, you have to put in a little more work to find those other evils, but you get the Hellhound immediately. Like, so that's a trade-off. I think it's balanced. And then some clarifications here, because again, perceiving effects are like, as we know with the Wretch, perceiving effects are very difficult to understand. So I don't affect how disguised good are perceived. So basically, he doesn't change how the drunk or the doppelganger is perceived. I don't cause characters to be perceived as not lying. So characters like the judge can see through the can see through the Hellhound, basically. Well, not really see through, but just like they like the characters like the judge don't care what role is they're perceiving. They only care whether or not the character is or is not lying, and the Hellhound doesn't change that perception. And okay, putting the actual like, and yeah, this was I I didn't like putting a specific interaction here, but I felt like it was necessary just because it's such a like because it's such a potential source of confusion that I thought it was necessary to put this. I don't affect the Wretch since I don't perceive them as disguised. Because the Wretch is not perceived as disguised, so the Hellhound only affects disguised evils. So the Hellhound wouldn't think to use their ability on the Wretch. And then Aroobis. Also not lying or disguised. Their innate ability is when I am revealed, you must execute someone before you can take any other action. While any other evil is alive, I cannot be killed. So basically, at any point, you might flip Aroobis, and then all of a sudden you need to execute someone. And of course, you shouldn't be able to spend this execution on someone that can't be killed and then just be able to proceed. Like, that's not the intention. And of course, you can't just kill the newly revealed Aroobis. So I feel like if you flip Aroobis immediately, like I was considering what happens in that situation, but I think it should still just work the exact same because in that situation, you have to take a random guess essentially as to who else is evil. Like you have no information, you're just Russian rouletting it. Um, and in that case, if you're right, then that feels really good. And if you're wrong, then that creates a tense situation where it's like, okay, I've used my one safe stab. You do get some information out of it because you now know that that character is good and you know, like, they're not corrupt. You know whether or not they're corrupted. You know whether or not they're a doppelganger or a drunk. Um, and you're able to, and then from there you can just flip everyone over and like now you don't have a safe stab, but I think because Aroobis doesn't have any other abilities, that basically just taking away that insurance of the one safe stab is a fair trade-off, I think. Uh, and of course, he might be flipped last, in which case uh, you just like you have to figure out from the information you have who's evil, and like that's that's fine. Yeah, I don't know. I think it's okay if Aroobis doesn't like have anything that prevents them from being flipped too early. Um, yeah, I think this is a reasonable trade-off for like just yeah, and he's just outing himself. Like he's just right like he's just out in the open. He's not disguised or anything. So I think it's a fair trade-off that like sometimes you just lose 5 health. Sometimes you just lose 5 health. And it creates a tense situation that you can usually make your way through. And like when you do that, like it feels good to like, oh, okay, that was tough, but I did it. Like I think it's fine. I think this is probably balanced. Maybe. I hope. Uh Okay, bonus dog, Sir Barose. He doesn't fit the same like scheme as the others because he is disguised. Because he's more intelligent, as you can see by his glasses. Oh, in case it wasn't clear, Hellhound was a minion. Aroobis and Cerberus are both demons. Cerberus's curse. While I am alive, when a good character adjacent or directly opposite of me would be revealed, I slaughter it. I only do this once. Innate, I am lying and disguised. So I don't think this does damage. I don't think we want this to do damage. Maybe it should do damage, I'm not sure. But for now, just made it not do any damage. Basically, he gets rid of a source of information for you because, like, he kills someone, and in exchange, you learn, you get a little hint to where he is. I guess it should also be said that he should probably only appear in games that have an even number of cards so that the directly opposite of me thing can work. And he will specifically only kill a good character. So you have some sort of doubt, like, okay, well, I flipped this character's other neighbor first. So this guy could still be Cerberus if this other one was actually evil, or maybe it's just like the neighbor, or maybe it's the opposite. Like, it does give you it gives you pretty good information on where Cerberus is, but also like it gets hard to rule out. Like, it basically puts it down to 3 places where Cerberus could be if you get someone slaughtered. But it's hard to, like, I don't know. I think it's I think it's fun. I think it'd be fun. And the hint just clarifies, I always use my curse the first time I am able. Like, he won't hold off on it just because he sees he might be able to use it later. Like, if he can use the curse, he'll use the curse. Okay, now for characters that are not dogs, Runaway. Her skill, the first time I would be revealed, I swap places with another unrevealed character, if possible, and they are revealed instead. So, yeah, and info, learn who I swapped with or that I didn't swap. Deceit, I will claim to have swapped. So basically, if, like, say she's at 4, and you try to flip her, then she'll choose one of the unrevealed characters. Could be evil, could be good. She doesn't care. She just chooses one at random that's not revealed yet. And then that character goes to where that character swaps places with her. She goes to where they were. They go to 4. And then that character gets flipped, and they do whatever effect they do when they're flipped. So, like, Baker will do her Baker things if it's Baker. Most characters will just give a statement. And then that only happens the first time she would be revealed. So so the next time you try to reveal the Runaway, she will just, like, be revealed, and she'll tell you who she swapped with. And the or that I didn't swap is just referring to the fact that if you flip the Runaway last, then she has no one to swap with. And then info from before I swap can become outdated. That's very important information, and, like, that's basically part of the confusion that the Runaway is causing. That if the Runaway is telling the truth, then some of the characters that were flipped before the Runaway might be talking about the state of things before the switch. But if the Runaway is lying, then they were just always where they are, and there is no, like, previous state that the other characters are referring to. The character I swap with gives info based on their new position. Just to clarify that, like, sort of edge case, because that's, like, right on the edge of, like, between the old state and the new state. So just to be clear, it's based on the new position. I cannot swap with slaughtered characters because that would be really obvious. And like, or if it wasn't obvious, it would like revive that character and then she would be killed instead, which doesn't make sense. Yeah, so specifically mentioning that she can't swap with slaughtered characters. Weaver. This is a character that might be a little too complicated, but here goes. Innate. Each character perceives me and themselves as being adjacent and as being the closest characters to each other. I am lying and disguised. So, the hints are characters can still count their true distance from me, but will consider me closer than any other character despite this. Characters only perceive me as closest and adjacent to themselves, not to others. So what does this all mean? It means that the lover can potentially say there's up to 3 evils, because like she could be adjacent to 2 evils, and then the lover thinks that the weaver is adjacent. A character like the Enlightened will just point in the direction of the weaver. They won't, like, they don't care who's actually closest. They're going to just point to the weaver. The hunter will also point to the weaver. The knitter has an unfortunate interaction with the weaver that if the knitter is evil, then herself and the knitter, herself and the weaver count as an extra pair. So if the weaver says there are, like, so if the weaver says there is 1 pair, then like that could create some 50-50. So maybe that's maybe that's not ideal, but you know, the hope is that other information on the board would be able to settle it. Because the knitter, a truthful knitter, might say that there's 1 pair if the weaver is not, if the truth is that there's 1 pair, because the weaver doesn't affect like the knitter's counting of pairs if the knitter isn't evil. But if the knitter is evil, then they could still say 1 pair if there's genuinely only 1 pair, because the knitter is considering herself to be adjacent to the weaver, in addition to the weaver being genuinely adjacent to another character, another evil. So the actual truth that she sees is 2 pairs, but she's still saying 1 because she's lying. So that's kind of interesting. It like nerfs the knitter a little bit. There's another, oh yeah, the scout. The scout is another character that's like only affected by it if he's evil. Because he can, like, if he's pointing to his own role or to the weaver, then he'll count his, then the truth that he's going to lie about, usually, unless he's the puppet, is however far he is from the weaver, which could be confusing if you have a puppet, because the puppet could say like the puppet is 4 away from closest evil, or like from its closest evil, when that's not, like, when that's like technically not a lie, and like because the scout is the puppet, and the puppet's just talking about the weaver. because he thinks he's closer to the Weaver than he is to the Puppeteer. Yeah, it would be potentially like adding that kind of confusion. I think could be fun, but I don't know if it's maybe too much confusion or if it's like unclear how that interacts with these other characters. So, you know, just a thought. It was just an idea. I thought I'd put it out there. Okay, so that's all the characters that I actually drew art for. Now the characters that I now here's all the ones where I gave up drawing art. Sentry, very basic ability. Learn how far I am from furthest evil. Just the opposite of Hunter, essentially. Um, I don't know. Just a simple ability. I thought would be interesting. This would interact with the Weaver, technically, because the Weaver, because he would never like, because if the Weaver is the furthest evil, he basically skips that because the Sentry thinks that she's the closest evil. Yeah, there's other interactions that the Weaver has with some of my other cards, I think, actually, as well. The Weaver would be made immune by the Hellhound, or like would be perceived differently because of the Hellhound, and is a potential target for the Watchdog. Which is interesting. Yeah, okay, moving on. Watchman. Info. Learn how many evils have been revealed before me. I think that just, like, this is, I think, the simplest possible ability where reveal order is important. Like, people get confused with the Baker, and, like, people, like, don't quite understand that with the Baker, reveal order is important. So I think having this show up first could potentially be a way of having that like reveal, like sort of tutorializing the fact that reveal order can be important. I don't know, just a thought. And I think it's just a neat ability anyways. Librarian, questioning 2. Info, starting from the first questioned and moving clockwise to the second, I count evils. Learn how many evils I counted. So I'm not entirely sure that it's like kosher that the order of the questioned matters, because so far it's like kind of commutative basically. Like it doesn't like choosing 1 and 7 is always the same as choosing 7 and 1. But for this character, there would be a distinction because you go clockwise from one to the other. And the questioned are included in the count, just to be super clear about that. And not daily, because I think this would be too powerful with daily. Just getting one read on like the number of evils in a specific range is like interesting information, but or you could just like ask about the whole board, and then you could just to self-verify the librarian. But being able to do both, like being able to potentially get up to 3 checks with the librarian is probably too powerful. I don't think we should have that. So that's why it's not daily. And like, I don't know if this is like more powerful than Jester, like too powerful. Maybe it's not that powerful. I think it's roughly as powerful as Jester, maybe. I don't know. Herbalist. Skill, at Foundation, I cure one good character if possible. Info, learn who I cured or that I cured no one. Deceit, I will claim to have cured someone. So, yes, basically, uh, she's only, or I say she, this could be a guy, I don't care. Um, like, I don't care what gender this character is made to be. Um, they cure someone, and you learn who it is, which is, I think, just on its own more powerful than Alchemist, because Alchemist's information is just so difficult to use meaningfully. Just pointing to a character and saying, like, they are good, they were corrupted, and now they're not, is like much more specific information that you can do more with. It is easier to disprove, it is easier to, like, use if you can figure out that the herbalist is telling the truth. Um, and yeah, I have kind of the same things as some of the other foundation effects and the alchemist here as the hints. I don't think she needs that buff that I suggested for the alchemist. Probably. I don't know. Uh, this is the same as what I said for the alchemist. And basically, I don't want the herbalist to attempt to cure someone that's already in the alchemist's range. I think they should try to cure someone else and probably act after the alchemist in general. So that, because that could give you like, and like it kind of helps to like give a bit of a hint if there's an alchemist and an herbalist, like whether or not the alchemist actually went off. Because if the herbalist says they didn't cure anyone, and the alchemist is saying they did, then that kind of suggests, oh, the herbalist, like the alchemist actually did cure someone, and it like gives you more of a hint. And maybe the herbalist would like, well, you need games where the herbalist actually shows up with the alchemist for it to help. But I was thinking maybe if the herbalist was in every game the alchemist was, then you wouldn't need the corruption immunity buff. Maybe, I'm not sure. I still think that would be better because you still have weird situations where the alchemist is corrupted and then cured by the herbalist. Yeah, I don't know. And the last one, I think, Bafflemet. Innate. When a questioning character is revealed, they choose their questions at random. I am lying and disguised. So, for a lot of characters that are questioning, the most useful strategy I find with them is to just self-confirm with them. Uh, which is, it's not fun necessarily, but like, I don't know, you gotta play to win. But like, having a character that forces you to not do that, because like the questioning character just like chooses someone at random. It's like, oh, well, now you just have to deal with this random information now, and you have to hope it helps you. Like, even if it wasn't an optimal choice, it's like you can get, like, I remember seeing a meme in the Discord where it's like, Poet was like, two is chill, two is a confessor, and it is like, thanks, one, we know. Like, you get useless information like that sometimes from, like, where it's like, yeah, okay, thanks, I knew that. And sometimes you might get that from these questioning characters, and you have to hope that you don't. And I think that could be fun. Uh, or at least provide, like, it's it's an interesting way to provide a new challenge, I think, that none of the other demons do. It doesn't add more liars, it doesn't add Like it doesn't hide information. It just makes certain characters less useful. Yeah, just an idea. And then one final suggestion. We're almost done. It's been 3 hours. Oh my god, how have I been talking for 3 hours? So I don't know if this would be like a difficult thing to code or anything, but if it's not, something that would, I think, help players understand what's going on in complicated situations is to have an event log. Like, okay, I don't know if this was I just came up with an example. This was going to be like a bigger one that like has like a bunch of bakers like doing things, but like of course it didn't all fit into here. But just something like this that just tells you everything that happens, and then that way you know that way the player can know what the hell happened if things looked really strange and it looked like a bug. And so that they could go through it and see like, oh, okay, that's what happened. Is that how that's supposed to happen? And then like they can be a little more informed if they still think it's a bug. Um, and it might be nice to have like visuals for this, but that might be asking too much. I've already asked a lot in this, so not that I expect like everything here. I don't like I shouldn't even expect anything here to be implemented really, except for the obvious changes because some of those were like low hanging fruit. Like everyone wanted the scout to stay. Everyone wanted the bard to stay closest. Uh, but yeah, this I think this would help players understand what is happening because sometimes players don't understand what's happening, then this would help. And if there could be visuals, that would be nice. Uh, but that might be a lot. Um, that's it. That's all I had as far as suggestions. Okay, I guess I'm done now. Uh, I hope that was interesting, at least. I hope that any of those suggestions were helpful at all. And I didn't just spend 3 hours talking for no reason. Well, no, it's fine. Even if none of the suggestions are taken, it was still a fun uh, exercise in like trying to do game development type of stuff without actually having to make an entire game. So yeah, no, this isn't a waste of time, even if none of the suggestions are taken. So, uh, but I hope that they are because I think that some of them would be good for the game. Uh, okay, bye.